Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to continue our WrestleMania series. This time, we are working on WrestleMania 36, which is quite the first time, quite the unique WrestleMania in that it was the first one split into two nights. This one took place at the Performance Center in Orlando, Florida, which was originally supposed to take place at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, Florida. But due to COVID, that did not happen. Don't feel too bad for Tampa. However, though, they do get their WrestleMania next year because COVID was still causing issues worldwide. The attendance for this event was one that WWE could not fudge. It was zero. This took place behind closed doors, filmed on March 25th and 26th, but aired on April 4th and 5th with the tagline, "Too big for one night," because they couldn't use "We're here because of COVID." A very unique WrestleMania, but per usual, we'll go through every single match, let you know what our thoughts are, and then give you our thoughts as a whole. And yeah, just like that, we will start with the very first contest of this COVID mania, if you will, that has Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss going up against Kairi Sane and Asuka of the Kabuki Warriors for the Women's Tag Team Championship. KP, thoughts on our very first COVID mania match?
Well, first and foremost, this is absolutely the first time I've gone back and watched any of the matches from this WrestleMania weekend. So I hadn't seen any match twice up until this point. So coming back and watching this one to kick things off, yeah, you do sort of get that sort of eeriness to begin with. You know, the ladies coming on down the ramp and, not hearing that pop or anything really to go alongside it. Just a very strange eeriness in the air. But generally speaking, though, you put that aside and you focus on the match content itself. This one actually is a pretty decent match, to be fair. I quite enjoyed this one. I thought it was good. I thought it was very back and forth. There were a few moments of drama, nice tag team continuity throughout. And yeah, I think it just had a good flow to it. I think I could imagine this one being in front of a crowd and then being pretty hot for it in parts, especially towards the later stages. You've got sort of like Kairi Sane and Alexa both hitting their top rope finishers, seemingly out of absolutely nowhere. Sort of like break up situations in the ring. One was a cover, one was just, I think, a little bit of an aftermath from a move prior. But yeah, I think it was a fun match. I think all four women had a massive task, to open, COVID Mania, but I think they delivered pretty well, to be fair. And it was a very professional performance as well. You see, the ladies sort of like playing to the fans, especially the faces, so Alexa and Nikki Cross especially. Um, yeah, I think it's just a very professional job from them for still doing that, and so fair play for pretending like the fans are in attendance. So I thought that was quite good. They didn't let it affect them too much. The matchup in the end, we do see it come to a close where Asuka misses Nikki, after, and then instead goes into the ring post via sort of like a spear attempt. Nikki deals with Kairi Sane by hitting a neck breaker before then tagging in Alexa Bliss. Alexa hits Twisted Bliss, and that would see them pick up the Women's Tag Team Championships from the Kabuki Warriors as a result. So yeah, I thought it was a fun match. Like I say, put these four in front of a crowd. I reckon this one's well received. To be fair, I gave it an 8 out of 10. Just I thought the in-ring content was pretty good. And yeah, I thought it just had a nice flow to it. So no real complaints from me. It wasn't like an all-time classic, but it was good. I enjoyed it. Nick, what did you make of this one? First ever COVID Mania match, and yeah, I guess it's something to get used to for sure. Looking back on it, but what did you make of these four women kicking things off?
Yeah, and similarly, I'll try not to use that kind of moniker there that because I'm sure we could put, almost every single one of these matches in it, and that is, kind of this match would have been a lot better in front of a crowd because of course it was. That's part of what we take, we kind of take for granted in that a good crowd can really make or break a match, and a lot of these are no exception. So this was absolutely a good example of that, and Kyrie and Oscar is putting on an absolute clinic, and why they are, what my favorite tag team just in general, not even just women's tag team, but they're very, very good at tag team and have been around for quite some time because of it. Forget that they've been around for as long as they have, but yeah, the reason they had the titles on them was a pretty good back and forth. And just to, like I said, an absolute clinic putting on by Kyrie and Asuka, but Cross and Bliss able to withstand all of that. With the Kyrie taking the pen, always have to feel bad for her. She seemingly always is the one that takes the pen. Asuka doesn't really ever seem to take the pen when it comes to the Kabuki Warriors tagging up, at least in my memory. So yeah, a decent contest, and just you forget that this period exists, and it really is just these guys were the first to do it of the night, and it just really can't imagine how difficult that must be for them, just how unusual that must feel. Um, but regardless, yeah, I think they pulled off a decent contest, and as far as rating, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. Just a solid way to start WrestleMania, and kind of a glimpse into what we could expect over the next 2 nights. The second contest of the evening has King Corbin going up against Elias. A very interesting kind of build for this one. Elias getting thrown off of that crow's nest we see so often on NXT, because remember, this is at the Performance Center. And apparently a fun little bit here that it wasn't this exact spot, but it was a another spot throughout the evening that Vince actually was trying to convince someone to jump off of this, and so he himself did the exact stunt. So, another reminder that Vince was absolutely crazy. But as far as this match, KP, what'd you make of this one?
Not a bad match. It's, quite vindictive, quite physical, pretty competitive between both men. I mean, we start off with a little bit of aggression sort of pre-match before the match does take place. And you see sort of Corbin taken to the mic, and he looks back on that sort of throw that you mentioned a moment ago, of Elias off of the crow's nest onto the floor. That was 8 days prior to this one, so Elias still sort of like seemingly selling that by not being around in that time. And then Corbin sort of like demands that he should win this matchup. He should be declared the winner because Elias hasn't turned up. And then lo and behold, Elias turns up sooner or later, walking down the ramp with a guitar. Corbin goes towards him. Elias just smashed the guitar right over him. And after a little bit of a brawl, we then do start off this contest. And like I said, it's quite physical. This one did hit quite hard. You sort of like sense that real hatred toward each other in the matchup. So yeah, I think they sort of played out the build decently to this one. You could tell these two absolutely hate each other's guts. So that was quite nicely done. But yeah, I think when it comes to the matchup itself, we did see a load of big strikes from one to the other in this one, sort of like a very big like fight almost feel to it, rather than a wrestling contest in a lot of parts. We saw some ring post altercations as well, just very vindictive contest here between both these men. Corbin covers Elias towards the end of the contest. He goes to try and get the victory by putting his feet on the ropes for leverage. Corbin's noticed though by the referee Jess Carr on this occasion, and that allows Elias to sort of like take advantage of that distraction because Corbin's dealing with the referee, and he sort of rolls up Baron Corbin, holds the tights of Baron, and that will allow him to get the 1-2-3 here over the King of the Ring. So yeah, it wasn't like a great match or anything, but it was quite hard hitting, and I didn't hate it. It's just it wasn't anything particularly special for me personally. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. So yeah, nothing special, but it was all right. It was fine, but yeah, pretty vindictive and just sort of like just physical fight here from both men that sort of turned into a bit of back and forth. Wasn't too bad. Nick, what do you think of this one though? Elias and King Corbin doesn't scream WrestleMania, but did you enjoy it?
No, it doesn't scream WrestleMania. And honestly, the way the match started was kind of unique in that King Corbin was just basically saying, give me the win because Elias wasn't going to be here. But props for him to make that swift recovery after falling 15 feet onto the cement. A very swift recovery there. But yeah, it was deeply personal, and those are the exact notes I had. Very hard hitting. Baron is nonstop talking trash throughout this entire match, which was entertaining. It made the match feel important, and as you kind of alluded to, it felt like a fight more so than a match. And honestly, that was fun. The only issue I have with it was the ending with the tights and the using of the rope and stuff. Like, if you are, you hate her that much, you really shouldn't be trying to get away with a win like that. And so that did bother me a bit. And yeah, just comparatively speaking, I'm not quite sure how the WrestleMania matches are kind of both alluded to already, but still a decent contest. I give this one a 6 out of 10. With that, getting into the next contest, which we has Shayna Baszler, who, if you recall, this was the year that Shayna just went absolutely wild in the Elimination Chamber, eliminating, I believe it was every competitor in pretty swift style as well. But regardless, Shayna Baszler going up against Becky Lynch, who is defending that Raw Women's Championship and has had it since the Mania before. KP, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, you're right. This was the year that Shayna went on a bit of a tear and made a very big name for herself on the main roster. And ultimately, in my opinion, probably should have had more to say than what she did. coming off the back of this one. Becky Lynch, going up against Shayna Baszler 1-on-1 here at WrestleMania. It was a decent match, between both ladies, and I thought it was, quite similar to the last contest. It was quite physical. I think sort of like with Shayna Baszler especially, really trying to punish Becky Lynch. But she withstood a lot of Baszler's punishment. Like she didn't go down, just sort of like in a whimper, but she was sort of like fighting through that throughout the match, as the match went on. And like seemingly that just played out until the very end of the contest as well. I'll mention a bit more about that in a moment. But yeah, it did have a personal feel to it, back and forth, competitive for sure. I thought Shayna looked very, very strong while she was going about her business, but I think Shayna taking a loss here probably was a mistake looking back, considering how well she was booked in the Elimination Chamber prior to this one and just being so dominant. I think, this is probably one of the bigger, like, disappointments of the weekend in terms of results-wise. Becky had a year-long title reign, go from Mania to Mania. So I think, it would have been okay if she'd lost it here to Shayna. It wouldn't be so much of an issue. But in terms of the match itself, I did find it to be quite a decent contest. It wasn't terrible by any means necessary. Shayna Baszler, towards the end of the contest, locks in the Kirifuda clutch before then dropping onto her back to lock it in further. As she sort of drops down, momentum sort of carries Becky Lynch backwards, and she rolls back over the shoulders of Shayna Baszler, and that keeps her down for the 3 count to get the win. There had been a build from NXT where something like this happened previously with Kairi Sane. Shayna had vowed to never let it happen again, and what did she do? Her first big opportunity on the main roster, it happens again. So, the booking for this one was a little bit shoddy, from my opinion, but like I say, Becky basically had a last-ditch attempt to win, and that was how she got it done out of nowhere. So, I'm not the greatest fan of this match, but it was okay. It was fine. It wasn't terrible. So I gave it a 7 out of 10. I just really wish that they had sort of pulled the trigger here, and it could have done Shayna absolute wonders from getting this result. So, maybe a missed opportunity for me personally, but alas, it is what it is. But not a bad match. Nick, what did you make of this one? Becky against Shayna, do you agree that maybe that was the wrong call based on how she'd been put prior to this one? But did you enjoy the match regardless of the result as well?
And the ending is a great point because, like myself, hadn't watched NXT consistently, so wouldn't have gotten that bit. Maybe they did hit on that, and I missed it, but I don't recall it. So regardless, the ending was an issue for me. It just didn't feel. It felt a bit lackluster. Kind of similar to the last match and how brutal this match was. Becky endured some really hard hitting spots here from Shayna, and vice versa. But in the end, a very good match. Just the ending just didn't quite hit with me, and you're 100% correct, and seems like we're working on the same notes here, but Shayna absolutely should have gotten the win here, beating the man Becky Lynch after the huge momentum and the run that she was on would have absolutely helped solidify her as a star. It's what could have been. Unfortunately, I don't think she really quite ever recovers from this. So make of that what you will. But it was an entertaining match, and I think something was still just missing a bit. Maybe it was just the ending, but this was a good contest for what it was worth. Very brutal. Gave this one a 7 out of 10. It's a very solid contest. Getting into the next match, we have Daniel Bryan with Drew Gulak going up against Sami Zayn with Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura. Sami Zayn defending that Intercontinental Championship. KP, thoughts on this one?
So, for those of you that aren't aware, I'm a massive Sami Zayn fan, and I love a bit of Daniel Bryan as well. So, you put these guys in the ring together. On paper, this one looks absolutely fantastic. It looks great. Unfortunately, it does not live up to that sort of vibe, though, because it's quite disappointing, really. Considering you got the names involved here and, the technical ability of both men, I think the gimmick here of Sami Zayn does him absolutely no favors and doesn't help Daniel Bryan either. I think it just sort of, it hinders both men. I understand where it comes from a booking side of things, but a lot of this match is spent with Sami Zayn basically running away from Daniel Bryan for a good, first half of the contest, I want to say. Like, he's running away through the ringside area, past Shinsuke and Cesaro, who are sort of stopping Bryan from advancing towards Sami. Sami gets back into the ring. It's very cat and mouse for a while. And then eventually we see Drew Gulak, who's accompanying Bryan, as you said. He sort of brings the fight to Cesaro and Shinsuke, sends them over the barricade on the corner of the ringside area. And that does then allow Daniel Bryan to have a bit of a one-on-one with Sami Zayn. But even still, during the one-on-one sort of style between the two of them, it's just all Daniel Bryan, except for maybe a couple of moves from Sami Zayn here and there. He maybe landed 4 or 5 different moves in this contest. So yeah, I really think the creative direction here did not help either man. And what can Bryan do with somebody who's got a gimmick like Sami Zayn did at the time? They can't really put on a very good match. Like, it's extremely hard to do that. If you like a bit of storytelling, maybe this doesn't, have some sort of enjoyment for someone somewhere. But even though I love both these men, I can't really vibe with this contest because it just isn't very good in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, just and also as well, let's go towards the finish. So basically, how we get to that point, Cesaro and Shinsuke return to ringside after being dealt with by Drew Gulak, as I mentioned a moment ago. They launch Drew into the steel steps, takes him out of the conversation. Bryan sort of lands a suicide dive style move onto both men. He heads to the top rope, looks to hit an aerial move onto Sami Zayn, but he counters with just a standing haluva kick. So not even like the one that we see in the corner, but sort of like maybe like a big boot, you want to say maybe. But either way, a haluva kick from a vertical position on Daniel Bryan, who's sort of descending down from an aerial maneuver. And that'll be enough for him to pick up the victory here in this matchup. I have a bit of a problem with that as well, because Bryan suffered extremely little offense in this entire match. Like, very, very minimal. So we just see Daniel Bryan literally WrestleMania beforehand, in the previous year, he would go up against, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens as part of a tag team matchup. I think that might have been 2 years ago, actually. But he withstood so much offense on that occasion. So what is going on with this? Why is he only taking one, not even proper finisher, and that's enough for him to lose? So yeah, I don't know. It's just a very big thing for me, this one. I'm super critical because I think it could have been so much better, and we were kind of robbed from that. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. I really didn't enjoy this contest whatsoever. But I appreciate, they had a game plan, they stuck to it, and obviously it worked. But not to say that's necessarily good. Nick, what about you, though? I bet you're probably quite disappointed in this one. It does look good on paper, but it just didn't meet that sort of criteria, did it really?
Funny enough, my exact same thought process. I think I've seen maybe 3 of these matches since they've happened. This obviously not being one of them. But as soon as I saw it on paper, I said, "Whoa, this should be a good contest." Obviously, we're both big fans of the 2 competitors in here, and then a couple of the guys on the side. Pretty big fans of them as well. But unfortunately, yeah, the Sami Zayn trying to get DB to chase him the whole time was a decision. It did make me laugh a bit, but did it need to last 5 minutes of a 9-minute match? Probably not. But normally I probably would have found that annoying. But just given the guys that it was, I didn't hate it. But unfortunately, the rest of the match didn't quite live up to what could have been. And I feel like a lot of matches were kind of like that throughout these 2 nights. Could absolutely just be a time restriction thing with COVID, and honestly, I just had too many matches. But regardless, yeah, the ending there was just lackluster as well. I'm sitting here writing notes on it. I look up and it's over, so I had to rewind it, and I was like, well, what happened? And just kind of haluva kick maneuver ish. Yeah, again, another interesting an ending that I wouldn't have quite went with. And you brought up a good point in Daniel Bryan not taking that much offense. So unfortunately, the 3 matches in a row where the ending just kind of felt like it took away from it. But the beginning of this one wasn't great either. So I gave this one a 5 out of 10, considering who was in the ring, but should have been much better. Getting into the next contest, and I think one of the endings that actually does work. So breaking that little streak there we have going throughout night 1. We have the New Day's Kofi Kingston going up against the Usos, Jimmy Uso going up against John Morrison for the SmackDown Tag Team Championship. A very unique setup here with half of each team representing them. I'm assuming that's because of COVID complications, but I thought we've seen 6 people throughout the night, but I didn't go back and recount them or anything. But regardless, an interesting setup that makes for an interesting dynamic here. KP, what'd you make of it?
It's certainly different. Yeah, it's very unique. I think one of the tag partners had COVID. I think that's why they did this stipulation, like just having one member of each tag team. But I don't know if I'm misremembering that. But I feel like that was what happened at the time. Maybe it was mentioned. But regardless, though, going from a 6-man ladder match to a 3-man, I think it still really worked. I thought it was a great contest. It was very fun. There were lots of quite exciting elements that went into this one here, especially John Morrison. I want to highlight him quickly here because I think everyone just sort of knows how fun Morrison can be in the ring, but you put him in a match like this where he can just sort of go crazy. This is sort of like his parkour sort of description of Morrison that we used to see. And his athleticism was brilliant in this matchup. He hits like a corkscrew senton kind of maneuver from the top of the ring post onto Jimmy, who's laid out on a ladder. He walks along the top rope, sort of like a tightrope sort of walk there, just pictured on the bottom left corner of the slide. And yeah, he hits a Spanish fly then off the top rope onto Kofi Kingston, which is pretty cool. Another cool spot in the matchup as well. Jimmy being launched from a ladder to ringside, just absolutely just throwing him right off there. I thought like just moments like that made for quite a fun matchup. And you've already sort of very quickly glossed over, but the ending as well, it was unique and it was well done. So that's the main thing. Sometimes you can do something different and it doesn't really work, but I think this one worked out quite nicely. So we see all three men on the top of the ladders in the ring. There are two ladders set up next to each other, and the titles sort of like become unhooked, and each man is holding onto them. So all three guys, you know, just having their say here, trying to hold on to those titles. Kofi and Jimmy both end up headbutting John Morrison, who instead of holding the sort of like hanger that they're placed upon, he's holding the championships instead. So when he gets headbutted, he sort of like falls back off of the ladder, and he's got hold of the championship, so they literally just fall off of the hanger itself, and he just lands on a ladder, but it's quite a nasty landing. But because obviously the championship's unhooked and he was the one that did it, therefore him and the Miz still are your tag team champions come the end of this contest. But yeah, it was something a bit different and unique, and it worked quite nicely too. So yeah, I got no real complaints about that one, but the matchup was really fun. It was high paced, it was energetic, it was just a fun match. It's not something that we'll see every day because, you know, why would we see half of a team compete in a tag team matchup? But considering they've done it, you know, just because of, you know, obviously restrictions or whatever or whatnot, illnesses, it played out. You know, I thought it was great. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Probably one of my matches of the weekend, if not my match of the weekend, I think. But yeah, just a very, very solid, good contest. Nick, what did you make of this one? This was quite an interesting matchup, but did it deliver in the sense that I said it did for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And if the reason was, someone having COVID, obviously that makes a ton of sense. So, regardless, I don't think it suffered from this. I think each participant, obviously Kofi known for the high spots, and Jimmy I always have rated higher than Jay. Even before the IWC turned on him. I just think he's massively underrated. And speaking of massively underrated, John Morrison, there's a reason he's been in the business for longer than 20 years. The dude just knows how to work. He's very, very consistent. And yeah, a tightrope spot he made look so easy. A lot of the wrestlers can't even quite get up on the top turnbuckle these days consistently without messing that up. So just kind of a testament to how good this man really is. And they put on a show here. I can only imagine how much better maybe this match could have been with 6 of them, just better in terms of more spots. But provided what we got, and the 3 of these guys, man, they made sure that even though it was half the amount of people, it was not going to be half the quality. And I think they did that very successfully. John Morrison retaining in the way that he did, I thought was a very unique ending as well, and one that actually worked and kind of broke our streak we were having there. But John kind of retaining there and still your SmackDown Tag Team Champions on behalf of Miz and Morrison. I gave this one an 8.5 out of 10. Is pretty high as well. Just a very quality contest and kind of the first really Mania feel vibe to it. So, which is impressive when you don't have a crowd. Getting into the next contest, we have Kevin Owens going up against the Monday Night Messiah, and that of Seth Rollins. 2 of the best here. KP, what'd you make of this one?
I know we've joked a lot in the past between the two of us about my displeasure for this gimmick of Seth Rollins, but generally speaking, though, I don't think that sort of had any impact in this matchup because it was just fun. I've mentioned this for a few matches already, but this one was also quite physical, very hard hitting, and had a really personal vibe to it as well. Just a really enjoyable battle. I think there's a couple of things you need to go through in this one because it starts off as a regular one-on-one matchup, and I think just the chemistry with both men for the one-on-one element of the standard contest, it does work out really nicely, and they put on a really good showing. We get to a stage where Seth, once the action spills to ringside, gets knocked into the timekeeper's area. He actually takes the ring bell from the timekeeper. He smashes it against the face of Kevin Owens. That obviously causes a disqualification. Therefore, the matchup comes to an end. Kevin Owens wins. And Seth seemingly is happy with that because he's, destroyed Kevin Owens' chances of getting a WrestleMania moment. And that's essentially what this build was all about, getting a Mania moment. So because of that situation, Seth sort of like starts heading back up the ramp, and Kevin then gets a mic and goes into the ring, starts demanding for Seth to come back down and to finish things properly. Before then, he negotiates with Seth, basically saying, come on down, we'll make it a no disqualification matchup, to sort of like try and entice Rollins, which actually does work. Seth does accept it, and he heads back down to the ring. And we then continue, restart, whatever. I'm not entirely sure if this all counts as one match or if it literally is just two separate contests. I've got them written down as two separate ones, but I'm sort of like talking about it all in one flow, so if that makes sense. By the way, the second match, or the continuation of the first one, begins, whichever you want to call it. And then we have that no disqualification rulage to the contest. We see Kevin get to a stage where he lays Seth out on the announce table, and he said he wanted that WrestleMania moment. So he goes and takes it. He goes up to the top of the WrestleMania sign, which is literally right above the announce table, and he jumps off of it, hitting an elbow drop onto Seth Rollins, plants him through the table, and after a little bit of a while, Owens does get Seth Rollins back into the ring, hits him with a stunner, and that'll be enough for him to get the victory in this second edition of this matchup, or just the restart contest. So whatever you want to say. But yeah, quite a chaotic route to get to the eventual finish, I suppose. But a fun bout. The second installment as well. I thought it had a nice feel to it. I got nothing really too bad to say about this contest. Because I think just going from that first match, the physical offense, carrying into the second matchup, where obviously things got escalated a little bit more as well on top of that one. Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was great. And Kevin Owens does get his WrestleMania moment, jumping off the sign. Apparently, Kevin Owens wanted originally, when this one wasn't going to be in the Performance Center, to jump off of the ship that was going to be part of the stage for the WrestleMania that was going to take place. So yeah, I mean, not having that obviously take place was a shame, but at least he got to do something, sort of cool outside of that. But I gave this one 8 out of 10. The whole segment from start to finish, whatever you want to call it, 2 matches, one, whichever, 8 out of 10 from me personally. What did you make of this one, Nick? Just sort of like a strange, sort of unique path to get to the finish here, but did you enjoy the journey that we went through to get there?
Yeah, once the match actually got restarted, and just for reference sake, I did treat this one as one match and cage matched it as well, so just kind of gonna go with that. But yeah, I thought this was a good moment. I didn't know the bit about the pirate ship. It's very interesting. Wouldn't put it past KO. KO does tons of things for us as the fans, and it's one of the many reasons why I miss him so much, and hopefully he can get back to the ring. But on the actual match, though, yeah, I thought that moment was great. Him coming off of the sign, still, I felt like that was a WrestleMania moment. So I can't imagine him doing it off the actual pirate ship, and how high that would have been. I can't imagine. Much higher, I would assume, but like I said, definitely wouldn't put it outside of the realm of possibilities for KO. And as KB kind of alluded to, he wasn't the biggest fan of the Monday Night Messiah, but I felt like I didn't get a fair shot, and I really liked the potential that it had. But regardless, yeah, I thought this match went really well, and well, once we got past the actual point of it maybe not restarting, because then at that point I was getting pretty pissed, because we've talked about it, going up into this match, we had some pretty questionable finishes, and I was like, are we really doing this again? But luckily this one got restarted, and I think was much better for it. Both men just kind of showing us why they are, two of our favorites. Just putting on a really good contest here, and absolutely no complaints from me once we got the match restarted. So yeah, I gave this one an 8.5 out of 10. Was my favorite match of the night so far, but finally felt like we were finally picking up some momentum with the last match in this one. Going into the next contest, we have Braun Strowman, who apparently was Roman's replacement after he decided that COVID wasn't worth the risk. And honestly, I don't blame him, considering his health record before this. I can't really blame him. But Braun Strowman being suited in there to go up against Goldberg, who is defending his WWE Universal Championship. KB, I don't think it's any mystery here that you and I are not the biggest fans of Goldberg, but was this match an exception to his track record that had us thinking, he actually isn't as bad as we give him credit for?
Of course not. No, absolutely not. Yeah, this is by far. Actually, I don't know. This by far. This is the worst match of the WrestleMania weekend for me personally, in terms of my overall. I'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, just a nothing match. Honestly, was laughable as a world title contest here at WrestleMania. Obviously, you do have to think that, like you said, it was meant to be Goldberg versus Reigns. So it was a bit of a last minute switch, getting Braun Strowman in to take Roman's place on this one. But yeah, it didn't do anything for me. It had 2 moves. That was literally it. 2 moves. Not even, I think in your classic Lesnar match, you do at least get 3 or 4. But yeah, 2. That is it. From start to finish, we see, spears from Goldberg. And then he attempts a jackhammer, doesn't land it, and then Strowman just hits a series of power slams before then hitting a running one, and that gets him the win and wins him the Universal Championship. So yeah, it just, I don't know, it just didn't do anything for me. It was hard hitting, sure, for as long as it went on, it kept to that style, but it just wasn't very long at all. It was short, didn't really have a lot of content in, no variety, and yeah, just unfortunately a situation that we had to live with. So yeah, I don't blame Roman Reigns at all either. I think, he probably made the right choice here. His health was, very up and down prior to, in the last few years going into this one. So I completely understand where he's coming from with that. So yeah, I think he made the right call. But yeah, obviously what we got instead, I don't think the matchup would have been much better if we did have Reigns and Goldberg, but either way, this one was pretty poor. 2.5 from me. Just didn't rate it whatsoever. Nick, what did you think of this one? It's yeah, it's another Goldberg match, really. It's sort of your typical style one, but what did you rate it?
Yeah, honestly, I'd probably put it up there with one of his worst matches because in most of his matches, at least he does a few things different. But as you mentioned, 4 moves from each individual. I think 4 spears from Goldberg, 4 power slams from Braun. Didn't even get the jackhammer in there, and it was just very, very paint by numbers for Goldberg, continuing to show us and the listeners why we just aren't a fan of his work. I don't blame Roman. He probably got told that he was going up against Goldberg, and he's like, "Nah, I'm good. It's not worth my time." When the review of the match takes longer than the actual match, the clock done at 2 minutes 13 seconds. That usually does not bode well for our rating, and this one's no exception. And the listeners finally got to hear a crowd reaction that matches my living room when Goldberg wrestles, and that is absolute dead silence. 2.5 out of 10 for me. Getting into the main event of night one, a very, very unique match, fitting to this WrestleMania. I don't think they probably could have, but I felt like this was just the perfect WrestleMania to do this. I think most people either love this or hate it. Just depends on which side you're on. But KP, which side are you on for this particular match?
Well, it's reassuring that it's not just me, at least. I am on the side that doesn't like this kind of thing. Cinematic matches aren't for me. Yeah, it's not my style of contest, really. So I describe this one as cringe, cheesy, overly dramatic, a bit of a monstrosity. Just nothing that I'm ever really going to enjoy. So many of the serious moments in this match, air quotes there, I sort of look at not because it's serious, but because I just find them amusing because they're just really cringy. Yeah, I can't take it seriously. I really, really can't. I struggle to do that. Cinematic stuff, I'm not a fan of that anyway. But when you bring it into wrestling and stuff, it just also it doesn't help it either. There were some moments in this one where okay, it was kind of cool, and maybe it was meant to be funny in a couple of parts. But for the general, I don't think it's meant to be. I think it's meant to be deadly serious because this is a very pretty big feud going into it, and understandably, both men are being hellacious towards each other, and I understand that that probably wasn't the case to make it funny, but I found it funny because I just couldn't handle the fact that these two were just being so serious about it, and just the way it just sort of went down was just, I don't know, I found it hilarious. I wasn't meant to though, obviously. But yeah, I don't rate it. I really, really don't. People absolutely love this matchup and they think it's fantastic, but I don't care for it whatsoever. As the matchup goes towards the end of this one, matchup, whatever. The experience, I'm going to call it from now on. As the experience gets to a close, Taker kicks AJ with a big boot into the grave, sort of that's been quite a staple of the encounter between the two men. And he buries Styles to end the contest using the the tractor that's very conveniently placed right by it. Sort of reveals a gravestone afterwards, which has AJ Styles and has his date of birth to the current year at the time, 2020. And yeah, it's got a bit of an eerie vibe to it for sure. But Taker sort of at the end of the matchup gets on his bike, which he used to, come over to the Boneyard, and he rides off into the sunset. So in terms of that, I actually quite like the ending cinematic bit because it does sort of show Taker riding off victorious. His career's over after this one. This was his last ever matchup. So that I do really like. I like that last scene. But everything up until that, I just find ridiculously corny and like just so cheesy. But yeah, that's just me. I'm not gonna say like you shouldn't like this one, but I just really can't. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. They tried something for me, it didn't work. It's whatever. But I think you're on more of the side that enjoys this kind of contest. If I remember rightly, I might be wrong, but I think so. What did you make of this match, the Boneyard contest, and yeah, how did it work for you? Obviously, this is Taker's last match, so we've been through this this journey, going through all these matches together, and yeah, this is the last one. So, what do you make of it?
Well, we are around each other quite a bit. We do these podcasts quite a bit, so it does make sense that you would kind of get the feel for how I review this match, and I am on the side of loving it. And nothing you've said is wrong, but it is rare that we disagree. And so, just going into the reasons why I love this match is, you know, is the reasons you hate it and dislike it, and that is just because it was so corny, it was so cheesy. But I just thought that was I loved that. I thought that was hilarious. um, the production location, the setup for it, how they make it feel mixed with the right amount of cheesy. Like I didn't feel like it was like it didn't take itself too seriously, and I feel like that was a very like if they just came out and did like a boring brawl, I think that would have taken away all the the possibilities and the opportunities for enjoyment that this match had. This being Taker's last match, I thought was a perfect setup for it. And what a journey it's been. That was a perfect setup for it. Obviously, you can help hide and you can kind of take your time and you can kind of make the spots, as you will. But the moment where Undertaker appears behind AJ as he's on the tractor, that very memeable moment. How many times have we seen that image since? The half pound of dirt poured at the end onto AJ. And then we show him later, his hand poking out of it, because he's buried from that little bit of dirt. I genuinely think that they knew this wasn't going to be serious, and for me, I think that's just what makes it enjoyable. It just it's enjoyable to me because I felt like they didn't take it too seriously, and had they done that, I would have had a completely different outlook. But for me, I just thought this was a very great moment and very uh, appropriate for the Mania theme, and that being, unfortunately COVID. And I think this was a great year to do it. I don't think any other year they probably would have even tried something like this. But I am curious to see how this compares to the other similar match. You call it a cinematic experience. I think that's a good term for it. I said, I just had it written down as more of a story than a match. But regardless, we're getting at the same thing. And so I'm going to take your term now, cinematic experience. I thought this was a ton of fun, and I gave it a 9 out of 10. So it is rare that we disagree, and that's probably, I definitely think that's the biggest variance of the night between the two of us. But for that is the end of night one. An interesting mix there, but towards the end of this video, we will get into kind of our ratings on each night, which one we preferred more, and we'll obviously do that at the time we're reviewing it, per usual at the end. But getting into night two, the very first contest, we have Charlotte Flair going up against Rhea Ripley for that women's NXT championship. And this was one of the few matches that I have gone back and seen, and very unique stipulation in that Charlotte won the Rumble and then goes after the women's NXT championship. So something that hadn't been done before. KP, what'd you make of this one?
The first of two WrestleMania meetings between these two ladies, and I remember obviously the later one being extremely good. But honestly, with this one, I forgot how good this match was. I really liked this one. The back and forth between both ladies I thought was pretty good. It was just a solid encounter. It was a battle as well, very hard hitting, really physical affair. And yeah, that literally went from start to end, really. We see Charlotte at one point, this very pivotal moment in the contest, avoiding a kick from Rhea Ripley as she's sort of like on the apron. And with Rhea's leg sort of like over the ropes, Charlotte drops the knee onto the top rope before then proceeding to spend the entirety of the rest of the match basically working on the leg of Rhea Ripley. Despite like so much like offense and, just punishment to that leg of Rhea, it actually does like show Rhea to be quite strong here because she fights through so much pain and punishment. I thought this one was really well done, to be fair. Like, Rhea looked absolutely fantastic. To withstand so much offense, to still fight through, to find counters to Charlotte's moves, to kick out of situations, pinfalls here and there, to reverse submissions and things. Yeah, I feel like she really fought from underneath here for a large part. I think a lot of people look back on this one and they think, well, Rhea obviously is so beloved now. This was Rhea Ripley when she was the NXT Women's Champion. She was coming into her own. She was getting into her element. She wasn't quite at that like peak level yet, but she was definitely getting there. And obviously got the attention of WWE for them to book a matchup like this, going Charlotte against Rhea, the Royal Rumble winner, like you just mentioned. So that obviously, puts some stock in Rhea Ripley right there and then. So I think she can be proud of that one as well. But yeah, the match was far from easy for Charlotte Flair here. Just a really strong opening contest for the second night, and I thought it brought out a real top performance from both women. In the like later stages of the contest, we do see Charlotte really sort of like fighting to get the figure four locked in. And Rhea does deliver a series of reversals. Eventually, Charlotte does get it locked in, and she bridges into the figure eight. Rhea doesn't even tap out straight away either. She holds on for a little while, trying to fight through the pain, but then she does eventually tap out once she knows she can't really do anything else. She has nothing else to offer. So she does lose the contest via way of submission. So yeah, I really liked this one. I thought it was fantastic. Really good way to kick things off, and just a really solid matchup between both ladies. Like, I gave an 8.5 out of 10. Like I say, I love their other matchup at Mania. I like this one as well. Like, it's a lot better than I remembered it being. So yeah, just a really good match from both women. Fair play. Nick, what did you think though? Obviously, their other one is so revered, but where do you rate this one in terms of your meetings? Well, their meetings together.
Well, it just has me looking forward to the next one because similar to you, I enjoyed every time they seemed to lock up. I felt like this match was kind of what the Becky and Shayna match was supposed to be, but just dialed up to 100. I think they probably could have split the difference. Obviously, the Becky Shayna match was only 10 minutes long, and this one was 20. So had they kind of equally split up that time, I think their match would have been better for it, and I think this match still would have been just as good. Because if I do have any complaints about this one, it was that maybe it did take a bit too long, but then very, very much nitpicking as the contest was generally very, very good. As if the presence in Mae Young Classic and NXT weren't enough for Rhea Ripley, who is only 23 at this time, which is just absolutely insane. This was a reminder for a lot of the mainstay, that didn't watch NXT consistently, that this was Rhea was going to be here for many, many years to come. So while this wasn't like a passing of the torch per se, it certainly lets Charlotte know that her torch was in jeopardy. The only other nitpick I have really from this one was Rhea. I felt like she was shouting a little bit, maybe a little bit too much, perhaps overdone, but I think that's probably just due to lack of crowd noise there, and then her probably trying to compensate because of that. But again, a very, very big nitpick, and I'm sure that's something that happens in every match. I just don't notice it because there's actually a crowd. But in the end, the Queen finally does get Rhea to submit there, and your new NXT Women's Champion. I just kind of loved the fact that she went back down to NXT just to show how much potential A, that brand had, and B, especially Rhea Ripley. Really good contest for me as well. I gave this one a 9 out of 10. Getting into the next match, we have Aleister Black going up against Bobby Lashley with his wife, Lana. Sorry, Rusev. KP, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, one of the torrid memories of this era is Lashley and Lana and everything that happened with Rusev. But a chance for me to see Aleister Black, someone that I have a lot of love for here just in wrestling, generally speaking. This one was quite a decent matchup. It was physical for sure. Both men going back and forth, hitting pretty hard, to be fair, as they traded blows. It wasn't an exceptional match, but the contest did flow quite nicely. It was quite enjoyable, to be fair, whilst it did take place. The mix of styles worked pretty well together here. Aleister Black using sort of like a mix of sort of like striking game, but obviously with Lashley's power. I thought they sort of bounced off each other quite nicely, and they made for a compelling contest. It was, like I said, very, very heavy hitting, and Lashley showed that in the early stages. Getting to a part where he's sort of rolling here, dominating the matchup, seemingly getting the better of Aleister Black and looking to close the match out. He looks for a Yokosuka cutter before Lana, who's on the apron, demands that Lashley goes for a spear instead. Lashley doesn't even, argue. He very politely sort of just obliges, puts down Aleister Black, and then, shapes up a spear in the corner. As he goes for the spear, it is lights out for Lashley. Gets met by Black Mass from Aleister Black. And then that is the 1-2-3 for Aleister. So seemingly just out of nothing win here for Black against Lashley. And obviously you can blame Lana because, Lashley was absolutely dominating at that point, in control. And it was her guidance that sort of, was a deficit for Lashley in this matchup. So, it wasn't like the greatest match. It didn't have an awful lot of time to it. And the finish was a little bit strange. But, I guess going forward, this was like, Lana basically just get a little bit too power hungry and like thinking she can control Lashley, and it sort of cost them in this matchup. But a good win for Aleister Black, obviously, getting a result here out of seemingly nothing towards the end there, just hitting that black mass. Something that I always enjoy seeing. 6.5 from me. Wasn't a great contest, but it did its job, and it set up some seeds with Lana and Lashley's dysfunction and sort of like them coming to blows. Well, not blows, but like butting heads later on. And we sort of see like a slow decline from there on. But yeah, a win for Aleister. I'm all right with that one. Nick, what did you make of this one? Aleister and Bobby, not the best match, but you got anything positive to say about it?
Yeah, I thought it was a very interesting mix of styles, and I too am fond of Alistair. But for me, Bobby Lashley has always been kind of underrated. I don't think a lot of people rate him just simply because he lacks charisma. But I thought his kind of schmoozing, of if you will, with Lana, like the way he would like kiss his fingers and point him over at Lana. I thought that was funny. Continuing to remind us that Lana is just always been a good heel, whether it's supposed to be that way or not. She's always come across as being very easy to hate. This being no exception. Obviously, costing Bobby his match for that storyline, which as you mentioned, lives. It's just one of those ones that's hard to forget for sure. But Alistair, taking that opportunity to land the black mass here. But yeah, very interesting in styles. I would argue maybe a bit on the short side, maybe given 5 more minutes. I know we love to use that, or I especially love to use that throughout these Mania reviews. But I think this is one of those instances. But for what we got, decent enough. Give us one a 6 out of 10. Getting into the next match, another very memorable story. For me, this was a better one than the last, though. This one has Otis going up against Dolph Ziggler, who is, of course, accompanied by Sonya Deville. Kind of just had that split between Fire and Desire, Mandy Rose. And Sonya, as Otis, is chasing Mandy, and Dolph is kind of intervening here. So a memorable story, but KP, what'd you make of the match?
I think commentary described this one as the modern day Beauty and the Beast, didn't they, at the time? Which is quite a crazy wild take, to be fair, on this one. But yeah, the story was quite fascinating, and you couldn't help but just sort of like get behind Otis and just all the sort of like happenings that went into this one. We even saw the early days of like the hacker and stuff on the SmackDown, that leading to Retribution in the end. I'm not going to gloss over that because that is something that isn't really relevant for this one, but it did take place and had a bit of a element of storytelling that went into this matchup taking place the way it did. So the match itself here at WrestleMania between Otis and Dolph, quite decent, to be fair. They do go back and forth for a little while before then Dolph like hits the second gear, takes control of the matchup. We actually see Dolph hitting a big super kick out of the gates, very, very early on, and that sort of like does set the pace for the matchup, to be fair. But they're both in a fight, and you can get that sort of sense from this one. It's really personal, a lot of history from this story, and it's all about the women, right? It's all about Mandy Rose. She is the main sort of like figure point of this story here, and that's sort of like what these two are basically butting heads about. And because of everything that Otis has been put through by Dolph Ziggler and Sonya Deville as well, I think it's like one of those situations where, you just want to root for the good guy. And that's what I think most of us were doing for this contest. Otis, he gets his happy ending in the end. We do see Sonya Deville, who's been quite animated for a large part of this. She gets onto the apron, distracting the referee. Otis then gets low blowed by Dolph Ziggler. Before then, Mandy Rose proceeds to come down, and she takes out Sonya Deville to the surprise of Sonya moments before. Mandy takes advantage of a distracted referee by then hitting Dolph with a low blow as well, so 2 for 1 in this situation. Otis gets back up to his feet after obviously suffering from that low blow that he suffered from Dolph Ziggler moments ago, and he ends up hitting the Caterpillar, and that'll be enough for him to get the victory. Post-match, obviously, you've got Otis and Mandy Rose celebrating in the ring, and Otis does get his kiss from Mandy. He carries her off, as they go to the back, and I guess walking off into the sunset together. So yeah, it made for a real feel-good moment. I think that's the main thing I want to describe this as, because it was that. Like, we all were rooting for Otis, and it was just a fun vibe. And the fact that he got his happy ending, so you can say, yeah, maybe it's cheesy and corny, but I liked it. I thought it was good for what it did. And the matchup wasn't terrible either. It was a story being told, and they told it quite well. 7 out of 10 for me. Yeah, I just liked it. It's nothing exceptional, but it's just good, and it feels nice to watch. Nick, what did you make of this one, though? Did you feel like you were rooting for the good guy in this one? Was it a feel good moment for you as well? And the matchup itself, how did you rate it?
Yeah, feel good and cheesy are both kind of ways to describe it. And I think when done correctly and timed correctly, it can be enjoyable. And this was no exception for me. A great story leading up to this one and a decent match as well. I think it could have used a little bit more time, but I really try not to say that all the time. Yeah, decent contest here. Mandy coming down at the end, I thought was very good as well. The Beauty and the Beast reference was a bit rough, but that's JBL for you, always trying to push the limit there. This particular match being no exception. But yeah, I think it could have used a bit more time for the actual because of how long they've been building up to this. But just a great contest for what we got. And Otis being one of those characters that everyone just always loves. How can you not? Just very lovable personality. And then Mandy to come down to defend his honor, then to get the girl, if you will, after getting the win. A tale as old as time, just a really enjoyable story and a great contest here. 6.5 out of 10 for me. Getting into the next match, we have a very unique contest as well. Edge going up against Randy Orton in a last man standing match. The very bold storyline in that Randy tells a mother that she loves her kids and husband more than she does. But then again, Randy is a very bold guy. KP, thoughts on this one?
I waited 9 years to see Edge go on to the WrestleMania stage once again. Obviously, with him being in his retirement, this is my favorite of all time, right here, right now. So maybe there's some bias coming in here. Maybe there's not. I'm trying to come out as a sort of professional standpoint here. This is a big fight. It absolutely delivers in that sense. It's a very big brawl for the entire contest. And it makes, I think, both men make the most of the stipulation. Last man standing. There's so many counts after various types of offense. They really sort of make the most of their environment. They fight all the way around the PC, including in the ring to begin with, around ringside, in the gym area, the production area. We see them going to the office at one point, and basically like a storage area, where they end the matchup as well. Yeah, a lot of the action is quite unique because of that environmental elements that are involved all around them, the present at the time, which does make for some innovative offense, throughout the matchup. But the main problem with this one is that it just drags an awful lot in parts. Yeah, it's vindictive. Both men are showing that against each other. And I guess in that sense, you're going to have a bit of a longer fight because they don't want to let they don't want, the last thing they want is that other guy to win, right? There's that level of hatred and animosity between the two men. So I get that. But it just does drag. And this is me saying it. I love Edge. I like Randy Orton as well. So I haven't got a dislike in this contest, but for me personally, even I was like, well, this is just a little slow. And yeah, I get it. The stipulation determines the fact that this is going to be a little bit of a sluggish, slow, long burning matchup, and that's fine. But because of just the moments in between and stuff, I've described similar matches, not similar, I described matches in the past on other WrestleManias as being quite boring and dull in parts, and I think this did have elements to that as well. As much as I hate to admit it, so I gotta be honest there. But yeah, I think they did a good job of being brutal enough without letting go of that sort of brutal feeling. But just they needed to sort of, I don't know, maybe just give them 10 minutes less. I felt like this one was 35 minutes long or something like that. It felt like a really long time, which is good. It makes sense, but I think it maybe was a bit too long in hindsight. The matchup towards the end of the contest, after a long hellacious battle between both men, Edge ends up choking Randy out before then hitting a concerto onto Orton, leaving him down for the 10 count. This is on top of a truck backstage. I'm guessing one of their moving trucks, storage trucks, whatever. And yeah, that leaves Randy down for the 10 count. Edge just stands there as if he's he's been to war, and it's eventually just come to an end. That's essentially what happened, to be fair. But yeah, I think he sells the fact that he's won the matchup, but he doesn't feel anything because of what he's been put throughout the entire contest. So that itself was quite well done, I think, to be fair. There was no real sort of celebration from Edge. It was just sort of like, I've done it, like it's over sort of thing. I've put him down, and yeah, I've got past him. So that worked quite well. But the matchup itself, yeah, just a bit dull and boring in parts, unfortunately. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I did like it, but I just would have liked it to have been a bit shorter, in my opinion. Not so many big parts in between where it just sort of seemed to drag. Nick, do you agree? I know I've mentioned matches before that have been a bit dragging and dull and boring in parts, but you've disagreed with that. Is that the same here, or maybe not?
Well, when said matches include Triple H, who I'm more fond of than most, I think that does kind of help along. But similarly, I was very interested in your review to this one simply because you were a very big fan of Edge, and you are a much bigger fan of Orton than I am. But what I will say about this one is, for all the things I think that the issues that you kind of brought up, I think it does everything else so much better that it kind of covers up that one glaring issue for me. Randy ambushing Edge before the match, and the whole point of this was Randy wanted to take out Edge so he could be around for his kids. Interesting storyline there, along with the other one I've already mentioned. Some very creative spots here throughout this one. The spear and the RKO on top of the trailer. I'm not scared of heights personally, but this one had me sweating. Just considering how sweaty they both are. Clearly, it's hot in the performance center, and being on top of that, just I didn't love that. But even after the match, Edge clearly conflicted. These two men have always excelled from an in-ring storytelling abilities, and so this should be surprising, but I think that translated really well here. For as much displeasure as I've given Randy in his in-ring style, one thing that I've always kind of preached on him about is he's great at telling a story, and Edge obviously is as well. And just after the match, this just clearly these two are very passionate for each other. They love each other very much, and I felt like that was very very well portrayed throughout this contest. Obviously, the one big glaring issue is the time, and I too had that exact time written on my notes, 10 less minutes, and I think this would have been perfect. But unfortunately, it does. I don't even feel like it drags, but it is long. I felt like they did a really good job of masking that from what they were doing. Obviously, you're walking from destination to destination, so that does end up taking the time. That's probably the biggest issue of this one. But still, I gave this one an 8 out of 10. I think. Yeah, obviously the time was the biggest issue, but everything else I thought translated really well. And overall, it was still a very enjoyable contest. Just not one that I'm going to go back and watch a bunch simply because it was 36 minutes long. But with that, getting into the next contest, which has Austin Theory making his WrestleMania debut, of course, replacing Andrade. So another instance of that being the case. A last-minute slot here with Angel Garza, who is also accompanied by Zelina Vega, going up against Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford of the Street Profits, defending their Raw Tag Team Championships. KP, thoughts on this one?
I like WrestleManias like this, like for moments that you remember how matches came to be, sort of thing. Like, if you sort of like asked me, who does Street Profits defend against at WrestleMania 36, I probably would have never even guessed that it was Angel and Austin Theory. Like, it's just a crazy situation. But looking back on the matchup, I thought it was a pretty decent tag contest. Pretty fast paced throughout. It wasn't the greatest, for sure, but that's fine. It was a decent match regardless. Theory and Garza, Angel, whatever, worked well together, considering they'd only been a tag team for about a week or so prior to this one. I thought they did pretty well, to be fair. They didn't seem out of sorts whatsoever. And yeah, they just blended quite nicely. Nothing went wrong in the matchup as far as I was aware. Just wasn't an all-time classic or anything, to that sort of level. But it's still pretty enjoyable in parts. We see Theory hitting a TKO before looking to cover Dawkins towards the end of the matchup. Ford then hits a springboard frog splash onto Austin Theory before then Dawkins sort of like rolls over to go for a cover, just sort of like last ditch basically onto Austin Theory, and that gets him the victory on behalf of him and the Ford of the Street Profits. They retain their tag team gold. Post match, Profits are attacked by both Angel and Theory, obviously very unhappy that they lost the matchup. And that then sees Zelina getting involved as well here. She's basically is on the end of just basically attacking Montez Ford, who's being held down by Theory and Garza. And once she sort of like delivers a swift kick to Ford, we then see Bianca Belair come on down, which I'm not entirely sure if this was her main roster debut, but either way, opportunities on the main roster for Bianca at this point were probably quite limited prior to this one. So yeah, we see Bianca come on down. She aids the Street Profits. They take out the other trio, I guess you could say, and then they celebrate in the ring together with Dawkins and Ford holding Bianca up on their shoulders. So yeah, this always a pretty fun segment, to be fair. I quite like the introduction of Bianca Belair at the end. That sort of come to the aid of the Profits. So that worked out pretty well. So yeah, no complaints from me, to be fair. It just wasn't an all-time best match, but it was decent and solid. I gave it a 7 out of 10. So yeah, no real complaints, but it was good. It was fun. Nick, what did you make of this one then? The Tag Team Championship contest, quite strange to look back on, but makes sense, with what happened. But how did you think that Theory and Garza meshed together, as well as the matchup itself?
Yeah, I thought Angel and Theory did well enough considering. Um, I think that did take away a bit from the match itself. I think for me personally, just like obviously the Street Profits aren't going to lose to a makeshift tag team. At least that's kind of what's going through my head. That just wouldn't have been a good call. Street Profits, I felt like did control most of the contest and were able to retain those Raw Tag Team Championship. But yeah, I feel like that's probably the best. I think for me, the best moment of the losing team, not taking that lightly, attacking the Street Profits after, for then Bianca to come to the rescue. And I thought they sold that really well. Kind of the interaction between Montez and Bianca, I thought was great, giving us a glimpse of the EST on the main roster with that BFT on Zelina Vega, kind of rescuing the guys here, which is a very unique angle. So I like that as well. But yeah, unfortunately, the actual match didn't feel like much more than a weekly show. So I gave this one a 6 out of 10. Getting into the next contest, we have Sasha Banks going up against Lacey Evans, going up against Tamina, going up against Naomi and Bayley, who is defending her SmackDown Women's Championship. KP, thoughts on this one?
Honestly, not a bad match at all. Decent for sure. Had plenty of time, didn't feel rushed whatsoever, and a lot of layers involved with this matchup as well, including the friendship of Sasha Banks and Bayley. The history between Naomi, Tamina, and Sasha, going back to Team Bad during like the women's evolution era sort of thing. You sort of like mix that in with the elimination stipulation for this contest. It makes for some kind of cool moments, to be fair. Some cool spots throughout the contest as well. Tamina being dealt with the way that she worked really nicely, and just Sasha and Bayley's tension towards the end, with Lacey Evans looking pretty damn good on the Mania stage. I think all made for a pretty nice sort of end flow to the matchup and a good finish. So let's break it down and like basically discuss how this match took place. So obviously it's a fatal 5-way elimination, so there would be 4 eliminations on the end to get the victory in this match for whoever would get that win. And in the end, we will, well, sort of as the match would take place, we would see Tamina, who's eliminated first. This is after Bayley hits her with a diving elbow drop. Sasha then follows up with a middle rope frog splash. Lacey Evans hits a moonsault, and then Naomi hits a split leg moonsault. All 4 women then cover Tamina to get that elimination. So that's obviously the first woman out of the matchup. But yeah, just taking out the power, the force of Tamina to begin with, quite smart from the other ladies involved. Naomi, she's eliminated next. Sasha Banks locks in the bank statement, which forces Naomi to tap out. So that was to take out the second woman of this contest. That then leaves Sasha Banks, Bayley, and Lacey Evans as the final 3. Sasha Banks gets eliminated next after Bayley accidentally knees Sasha moments prior to what I'm about to say. Sasha gets back into the ring though and does confront Bayley before then Bayley sort of like shoves Sasha out the way of an incoming Lacey Evans. Bayley sort of gets knocked down onto the canvas anyway, and then Lacey just turns around and just absolutely just wallops Sasha with a woman's right. That eliminates Banks and then leaves it down to Lacey Evans and Bayley. We get to a stage where Lacey's rolling, going through the motions, doing pretty well for herself. She hits a moonsault before then covering Bayley, only to get a 2 count, so a very big kick out from Bayley there. Sasha does return to aid Bayley, though, in the closing stages by hitting Evans with the backstabber before Bayley then hits the Rose Plant, and that would be the 1-2-3, and still the SmackDown Women's Champion is Bayley come the end of the contest. So, yeah, quite the interesting stipulation here, being in a 5-woman elimination match with your tag team partner being one of those opponents. But Bayley does a great job of retaining her championship nonetheless. It had a good feel to it, like I said. Just didn't feel rushed whatsoever. We've seen matches that have been elimination rules in previous years, and one of those in the women's division. and that one was extremely rushed. But this one didn't have that vibe whatsoever. I thought it worked out quite nicely. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. All five of these women had a chance to show what they could do, and like I said, had plenty of time to go about their business. So, big bonus from me for that one. So yeah, 7.5, pretty solid. I enjoyed this one for what it was, and a great moment for Bayley winning on the WrestleMania stage. She held down that title during this era, and yeah, deserved a WrestleMania win. Nick, what did you make of this one, though? Agreeing with me, the fact that it had a nice flow to it and, didn't feel too rushed. Just generally, what are your thoughts about this five-way elimination matchup?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Of course, I do. And all the points you brought up, being the exact reasons why. A lot of drama in this one, and I particularly enjoyed that, especially between the likes of Bailey and Sasha. The kind of tension that was there. Taking out Tamina, obviously, you have to do it. Um, I always thought Lacey got a bad shake. I feel like she was something special had she been given more time, and just does some good character work in here as well, and looks decent as well. The ending with Sasha coming back in there to assist Bailey, because absolutely Bailey, as you kind of mentioned, the role model, absolutely carried the women's division during this COVID era, and should still have that title, and she does. I gave this one a 7.5 out of 10 as well, believe it or not, and that is yeah, it's a quality contest, not the best women's match of the weekend, but a quality one in that. The next match, getting into, I'm curious to see how this one compares to the other one. Obviously, I think this one is much less of a match than the other one, being the Boneyard match, but this one definitely more of a cinematic experience, as you dubbed earlier. Running with that, we have John Cena going up against the Fiend in a Firefly Funhouse match. I remember going into this one just people having absolutely no clue what it was going to be. KP, how did you receive this one?
Yeah, I mentioned my displeasure for the cinematic matchup on night one, and I wouldn't say I enjoy this matchup either, but what I will say is that because it's not serious, I think I can sort of relate to what the vibe is going into this one a lot more. So I do enjoy it a little more, to be fair. It's a crazy match. It's strange. It's weird. It's eerie. There's a lot of superlatives that you could describe it as. But in terms of just generally speaking, there are so many layers involved here. We see references to so many different things throughout the matchup, including the ruthless aggression, John Cena. Saturday Night's main event gets a throwback in here as well, featuring the Muscle Man and Johnny Large Meat, as Bray refers to John Cena as. Dr. Thugonomics is involved here. We've got Eater of Worlds Bray Wyatt. We've even got some Monday Night Nitro in here with the NWO, John Cena and Bray Wyatt both sporting some NWO clothing here in that particular throwback. And yeah, then we get a bit more of a modern day thing, which is the Fiend being involved towards the late stages. So yeah, it does have a lot of elements here, and it's not my type of match, but with all of the layers of involved I just mentioned, all those highlights sort of things, so many callbacks, and there is a story to be told because of all of that. So I do quite like the fact that it's sort of like a bit of a retrospective on, I guess, both men's careers here, but also not only that, but throwing in the NWO because, well, and the SNME stuff because, why not? Just add a couple of layers in. It's amusing in parts for sure. It has an intriguing feel to it. More of a showcase, to be honest, than a match. Like obviously we've experienced, well, we said already, sort of like more like a cinematic experience. But yeah, I think it is quite fun as well. That's what I will say. And that's in the name. It's a Firefly Funhouse, so that's good. Um, but yeah, we see the end of the matchup. Kind of weird feeling. The Fiend does appear. He hits locks in the mandible claw on John Cena. He keeps John Cena down, whilst Bray Wyatt does the count for 3 to count effectively his alter ego, the 1, 2, 3, and get the win here. So yeah, it is a wild situation, to be fair. These cinematic ones are a strange thing. You either like them or you hate them, like we've already mentioned. I would say I like this one, but I wouldn't say I love it. Like it's fun. I'll give it that, and it's quite interesting. I love the storytelling. That's the main thing I like about this one. 6.5 from me. So I did give it a higher rating than the Boneyard matchup, but still nothing incredibly special for me personally. It's just not my type of vibe. Nick, what did you make of this one? Comparatively speaking to that of the Boneyard, do you enjoy this one more, less? Do you like what they did here in terms of storytelling aspect? And so many references. I'm sure you probably enjoyed a few of these looking back through, right?
Yeah, I got the SNME reference before we actually brought it back. So interesting to see there. Clearly, it was always kind of liked by WWE. So yeah, I similar to the other one. I liked the vibe this one put out. I thought this one obviously being more of a story than a match, but I enjoyed them the same. I gave them the same rating. Um, I just think it's just the absolute best year to run something like this. I imagine there are some out there, that don't care for either. And you're kind of, I think, a unique person, KP, in that you like them but don't hate them. Uh, from what I've seen, people either just absolutely despise them or absolutely adore them, and I'm obviously more towards the latter. But this is definitely not a standard wrestling match. But for me, this just worked on so many levels. I loved every bit of it. The hardest part to decide for me was which one I liked more. But this one just had so many callbacks and just such a unique and very fitting to Bray Wyatt and or the Fiend's character. Fit his vibe very very well, as did the Boneyard match with Taker. So for rating wise, like I said, same rating here. Gave it a 9 out of 10. Just enjoyed it for what it was. Obviously not a 5-star classic, but a great storytelling abilities from both guys here, and just a very unique cinematic experience. So I enjoyed both quite a bit. Getting into the main event of WrestleMania weekend, or COVID Mania, if you will, we have Drew McIntyre going up against Brock Lesnar. Very similar vibes to that of night one, which obviously had Braun Strowman and Goldberg. KP, I'm going to ask the same questions here. Brock Lesnar defending his WWE Championship. Was this the match that changed your entire viewpoint on Brock Lesnar, or was this more of the same for you?
No, no, no. Not even gonna play around. Nah, absolutely not. It's just another Lesnar matchup, to be fair. Typical Brock Lesnar contest. Very little move variety, short length, a finisher fest. Yeah, for a main event, it's not it's not only just lacking in that department, but it's one of the worst matches of WrestleMania. I think it's my second lowest rating. It's slightly better than that of the travesty from night one, but yeah, it's just not good, is it? Like, to be perfectly blunt and honest. It's a great moment for McIntyre, though. That's the main highlight here. Him finally winning a world championship. This was his first one. Obviously, we've seen him win a few since then, but yeah, this is obviously a very great moment for him in that period, and being the one to sort of like carry WWE into the into the depths of the COVID era. Drew went on to do some things, to deliver some very heavy lifting here off the back of this matchup. So yeah, I highly sort of respect the fact that Drew got his moment, and the way he did it. It wasn't a great match, sure, but you can still respect that it was a big moment for him personally. So yeah, it was good to see that for him. It's just a shame it wasn't worthy of being a WrestleMania main event match. That's my only slight downfall and issue with this one. Literally, the matchup does take place, and we see Drew McIntyre overcoming a lot of Brock Lesnar offense after a series of German suplexes and F5s, and Drew kicking out of them. He even kicks out of one of the F5s at one, which is quite crazy. And yeah, Drew then hits 3 Claymores in a row, pinning Lesnar to get the win and becoming the WWE champion. So, like I said, fantastic for Drew, but just a shame that isn't a very good match. I gave it a 3.5 out of 10. Like I say, it wasn't as bad as Goldberg and Braun Strowman. It was slightly better, but yeah, it's not exactly a great matchup regardless of that. Yeah, it's just a shame that this was the main event. Like, I think there have been a few matches that have been, main event worthy, I guess you could say, but this one was probably not one of them. It's more about the moment afterwards, in my opinion. Drew McIntyre getting that W, getting that championship. That was the most important thing here for sure, and it was a great feeling, I would imagine, absolutely. Even though it wasn't in front of fans, I'm sure he loved this moment regardless. Nick, what did you make of this one? Yeah, it's Brock. It's a typical him match, but it's good for Drew. So, yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, being better than a Braun Goldberg match obviously is a very low bar, but you are correct in that. Just looking at the kind of TV at the time this is closing up, 6 minutes and 54 seconds left of WrestleMania when the bell rang for this match, so you knew exactly what you were getting. Drew hits a Claymore, but Brock does kick out, which I think was the first time, at least according to commentary. A few more moves by Brock, the ones, but then Drew hits 3 Claymores to get the win and your new WWE champion, Drew McIntyre. So a great match, no, but a great outcome, as you kind of already hit on as well. The only downside is you also have already hit on Drew couldn't do it in front of the fans, but slightly better than that of Goldberg and Braun. But like we said, a very low bar. I did give this one a 3 out of 10. But with that, KP, WrestleMania 36, that was a long one. We knew that going into it, but curious to get your overall thoughts on the entire event, which night you liked better, and your overall rating. And we'll get this one wrapped up.
I think both nights have their sort of highs and lows. As you would expect, that's not really saying an awful lot. But I think generally speaking, there are some good bits here and there. My main highlights from this show, probably the fact that, we had that triple threat ladder match for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. John Morrison shining in that contest as well. That was probably my favorite match from night one. In fact, it definitely was. Rhea Ripley and Charlotte, going down at the start of night two as well, I thoroughly enjoyed. So there were some pretty good matches throughout there. Obviously, there are some low points, and here and there, it is quite a long WrestleMania when you sort of compact it into two nights into one sort of thing, as we're doing here with this review. So it does feel like we're doing a lot. But I think, just generally speaking, COVID Mania, it's very hard. I feel like if you had fans, maybe we would give these matches maybe a slight increase in ratings for the most part, because I think as fans, we love to vibe off of what the audience is feeling at the time, whether they're enjoying it, whether they're not. That sort of reflects our mood and our personal sort of interest levels in the matchups themselves. So I think that does take away a little bit, but I'm not trying to sort of like make that too much of a factor here. I've sort of looked at it from a sense of how good is the match itself rather than how would the match sort of come across in front of like 70,000 people. So yeah, like I'm just going with the fact that the match themselves were kind of good, to be fair, for the most part, but obviously there are some disappointing ones in there as well. Yeah, in terms of my overalls though, night one comes out as a 6.5. Night two comes out as a 7, so that's an average for all my ratings put together. So therefore, at the end of, I guess, both of them, I would normally round up. I'm just gonna stick to what it is, 6.75 out of 10 for this WrestleMania. So it's not the worst one we've seen by any stretch. There were some really solid matches, so yeah, I guess take it what you will. It's not that bad. It really, really is not. So definitely a couple of matches worth watching back, I think. But yeah, decent for sure. What about you though, Nick? Obviously, it's an interesting vibe. It's different to all the rest of the manias, but how does it sort of fare for you in sort of the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, similarly, I felt like there was, all things considering, with COVID mania here, I felt like it was better than it should have been. Like you said, it's so hard without the fans to take what could have been, and you would love to see this obviously in front of fans. But in terms of rating, night one got a 6.6 from me, and night two got a 6.8. So basically, meet those in the middle, 6.7. Yeah, definitely not the worst, but all things considering, I think it went pretty well. Best matches for me would be probably Rhea and Charlotte. I thought that was a great contest. I enjoyed both cinematic experiences. I really enjoyed both of those. Like I said, either love him or you hate him. And then the Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins match I thought was pretty good as well. But generally speaking, it is frustrating because you want to know how these would have been perceived throughout or with an actual crowd. But regardless, I think with best case scenario and during a very challenging time, there was a period where we didn't even know if we were going to have a WrestleMania. But WWE, I felt like came through and gave us the best possible issues, all things those considering. I think they gave us the best WrestleMania that we could have had. But with that, WrestleMania 36, COVID Mania, if you will, what did you all make of it? What were your highlights? What were your lowlights? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, as that does help us out over here at The Push. We'll continue doing this. We are down to just 5 left. Crazy to think, but we are on the home stretch, and it's been quite the journey. This one obviously being the longest, and they just continue to get longer. So we'll continue pushing those out up until the week before WrestleMania 42. But we are almost there. But until next time, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. We'll see you soon. Take care.